Well, I want to welcome everyone to Unsaid. I am your host, Katie Whiting, and we are super excited to continue our amazing and very insightful discussion on the symptomology that we've gone over in many episodes, figuring out that we're leaning into some perimenopause things. So while I have had fabulous guests join us, I am very excited for today's fabulous guest. I should have saved that word for you.
It's okay.
Fabulous Karisa Kaye. I will let you introduce
Thank you.
yourself because it's just cool to hear all of the things that you do and who you are. But thank you for coming today.
I am honored to be here. So thank you, Miss Katie. So I think the audience should know we have two hyper blondes from Michigan talking about, and we're two mental health professionals practicing in the South. So it's like hype energy. So thank you for your hype, ma'am. So my name's Karisa Kaye. I am a marriage and family therapist by training who's gone on to do specialized training in clinical sexology and sex therapy, as well as complex trauma counseling. So I'd say I like to work with grown-ups and grown-up issues. I have a medical background. I grew up in a family that practiced medicine in many capacities, a chronically ill father who had a ton of endocrinological issues. And so I have worked as a pharmacy tech, a medical technician. I wanted to go to medical school. I've been on medical missions. My heart was to originally be a physician. So I naturally love science. And anyways, my faith is an important part of me, and that I felt like the Lord was leading me more in a different vein. But now I have the beautiful opportunity to practice with sexual health experts as far as hormone experts. So I have two locations. My practice is called I Love Us Relationship and Intimacy Counseling here in Chattanooga. And one of my offices is connected to a place called Optimize You. It's a hormone optimization clinic that consists of nurse practitioners and physician's assistants that specialize in sexual health and endocrine health.
Love it. Oh,
yeah.
You're just cool. I said to you before, like, if the listeners don't know, I randomly found you on Google, by the way.
You did?
Yeah, that's how I came across you for that first event.
Yeah.
And then, and like just read, first of all, your pictures are fabulous on your website. And then I read about you, and then, you're just cool. So
back at you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So insightful. And so I'm so excited to, one, you will be the first mental health person we've had on in regards to the perimenopause discussion. Okay. And so obviously, biased as I am, I believe that is a very huge component, important part. And as our listeners know, I'm using myself to the most part. We might bring in some other things that certain parts of our thing, but as the guinea pig, because those that have listened to the series now know my main symptoms, which I've gone over with you. And, we've had a nurse practitioner on, we've had nutritional aspects. I've had even people with different cultural trainings to bring in perspectives from other countries. So
love that.
Really cool. But you, right? So I came to you. What I want this to look like for the first part is just tell me, like, if I'm coming to see you, right? I'm your client or whatever through your scope of practice, and I have these. I'm 38 years old, and I have these, newer symptoms of mood swings, hair loss, brain fog, libido changes, that kind of thing. Where do we go? What do we do?
Okay, so as a practitioner, my first concern with clients that present with those concerns is I need you to get blood work done. Okay. So I, as a practitioner, am holistic. We are, again, with my biology and medical background, we are biological organisms. And so we are a human chemistry set. And as women, from birth to death, whenever death may be, hopefully later on in the geriatric stage, we are influenced by hormones and chemical messengers all throughout the human development and growth experience. So human fetuses are influenced and flooded with different hormones. Children are flooded with hormones. When we hit puberty, we see a ton of mood changes and sometimes mood disorders that develop as little human beings flood into puberty and sexual development. And then when we get into reproductive years, us ladies, every week of the month, our moods shift according to our hormonal fluctuations. And then we go through perimenopause and menopause. There's a ton of mood shift and exchange. So I've learned as a practitioner, hormone health absolutely equals mental health. And that's true for men and women. And I want the whole world to hear that. I want my fellow colleagues to hear that. I don't know why more OBGYNs and urologists are not trained in that. So we can talk for hours about that, and hopefully we get to share more specifics. But if you come in and you're a female client presenting with those symptoms, my first concern as a sex therapist is, Katie, I need you to go get blood work done because I need to know what's going on with your hormones. I need to know what's going on in your body. Because we can do great therapy, we can do cognitive therapy, we could do trauma therapy, we can do mood regulation. But if you have chemical predispositions to be dysregulated, our work is only going to go so far. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I believe, I obviously shared my labs with you, and I didn't have I had a few labs drawn, but like from that perspective, if you're cool with it, let's just go that way. So I get some labs drawn, and maybe you would have wanted more, but I get those drawn. What do I bring them to you, and what do you see?
Yeah. So big disclosure, I'm not a doctor. My partnership with the clinic I work with, they've taught me a lot. Numbers are numbers. And so if you're a woman who's in premenopause or reproductive years where you're having regular periods, I'm going to ask you to consider what day of your cycle are you in when you get your labs drawn, because that matters. And so most practitioners who are educated in this are going to say they want you to get your blood work done on days 3 to 5 or 2 through 5 of your period.
Okay.
So
your period.
So from the first day you start bleeding, they want days 2 through 5. They want to get your blood draw then, or days 18 to 21. Okay. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, once you get your numbers back, let's look at those numbers, because if you were to look at your labs or put them on the screen, every week of the month, there's a different range.
Sure.
So your estradiol in the luteal phase is going to be different than estradiol in the follicular phase. Is going to be different during menstruation. So estradiol, testosterone, progesterone, DHEA, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, all of those hormones are different every week of the month. So those are the things I'm going to want to look at with you. And then we're going to talk about how those different hormones impact your mental health and your sexual health. Am I answering your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, my labs are done specific time periods. We go over them in regards to this is what this could, like this number being this range could cause this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because Karisa, and I think I know the answer to this, but why? Like, why is it important for myself to know my hormones related to my symptoms?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, girl, we got like 10 podcasts inside of this. Okay, so let me talk big picture. So our hormones influence so much more than we're actually learning so much right now because of women being fed up and frustrated with their perimenopausal and menopausal experience. That women are diving into all this research. Medicine has been very dedicated to male science. Now it's like, hey, we got to help the ladies out. Like, women are not thriving. So anyways, so estradiol, let's take estradiol. So all of us ladies have 4 different types of estrogen. Okay. So 4 different types. Estradiol is probably the most potent of the estrogens.
Okay.
That is absolutely connected to sexual desire and pair bonding and attraction to your partner. Okay. So what we know about estradiol is it is connected to serotonin. So serotonin, especially for us ladies, has to do with happy neurotransmitters. I'm happy, I'm satisfied. It's why women are drawn to bright spaces, why we need light, because light helps with serotonin production, which makes us happy. It's what we try to access when we take SSRIs like Lexapro, Zoloft, Wellbutrin, etc. That is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which basically means this neurotransmitter in my brain, maybe I'm deficient for several different reasons. If I can take this medication, I can optimize what levels my brain already is producing. So what we're finding with PET scans for women, for example, who are surgically put into menopause, is when they use hormone replacement therapy, it acts as an SSRI. So estrogen replacement therapy is very similar to an SSRI in the brain. There are tons of estrogen receptors all over the brain, all over the body. When women are going through perimenopause and menopause, they're finding that the estrogen receptors in the brain actually become more active because they're like, hey, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? So they're really hungry and they're trying to find it. So estradiol is what makes it opens us up to sexual desire and mood and serotonin. It helps me feel better. What I have seen in my clients, for example, who use hormonal birth control, is that decreases our levels of estrogen, our estradiol, and then it induces depression. And it often shuts down libido.
Okay, say that again. Will you say that one more time?
Yep. So hormonal birth control, and there are they're not a billion, I'm being dramatic. A lot of studies out there about the negative impacts of hormonal birth control on mood, mental health, and sexual function. Okay. When most women use estradiol, more often than not, it decreases, when women use hormonal birth control, hormonal contraceptives, it decreases estradiol, which then results in oftentimes depression, as well as a lack of libido. It shuts down sexual function. It makes our desire for sex decrease. It makes our mood decrease. Testosterone. Let's talk about testosterone. Testosterone, if you come in, I want to look at what my hormone people have taught me is we're looking at free testosterone and total testosterone. So if you're getting labs done, I tell ladies, I want you to get your free testosterone looked at and your total. So the people I work with really appreciate looking at the free for some, I don't remember all the reasons, but free seems to be more indicative of overall quality of life than the total. We're looking at that. If you're on hormonal birth control, sex binding, how does it go? Sex binding hormone globulin gobbles up what is biologically available in the body. So it decreases your testosterone, which then decreases sexual arousal and drive and motivation. So big picture, there's so much. So big picture, we ladies need testosterone. Yeah. We need testosterone just as much as men need testosterone. We just don't need as much. So a healthy male should be 15 to 20 times that of a healthy female. Testosterone is just as important for female quality of life, brain health, sexual function, orgasm health, tissue health, muscle tone, lean muscle mass production, etc., guarding against visceral fat, etc., things that lead to cardiovascular disease. We need testosterone just as much. When women use hormonal birth control, that is less available for the female brain and body. When women go into perimenopause, their testosterone gets lower. They're often struggling with testosterone. When they're postmenopause, they often are not, their body, like their ovaries are like, we're not producing all the good things anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which then results in brain fog, low sense of self. Testosterone plays into a sense of confidence. Again, lean muscle mass. There's a special relationship between testosterone and norepinephrine, which helps me to be focused and assertive and to concentrate. That's why men tend to seem more assertive in their gender, because they have higher levels of T. Well, what we're seeing in men right now is across the board, men are producing lower levels of testosterone than ever before. So when we talk about like feminized men or emasculated men, like men not showing up in the family, men not showing up at their job, not being motivated, we call it low T males. It's because testosterone is supposed to make me like get up and go and do something.
Yeah.
And that's true for women as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So side note, should I be like pounding down the door to the low T clinic and like in line?
You should not do the low T clinic, but you definitely want to work with a practitioner who's looking at your testosterone levels.
Yes. Yeah.
And here's why I'm biased and why I love working with Optimize You. Not all practitioners obviously practice the same and have the same mindset. So you can go into 10 different practitioners and they're going to say, oh, well, you're within normal range. Yeah. Within normal range is not necessarily your optimal range. So your range could be like a guy's range could be 0 to 1200. And I have a lot of men where they go in and their levels are at 200 or 300. That's pretty low for the quality of life that they want, right? Maybe their erections aren't, their bodies aren't responding. Their sex drive is low. They're still kind of wrestling with lethargy or depression. With ladies, women will go in. I have a lot of young ladies because of a lot of different factors that'll go in. And free testosterone, the levels are like 0 to 4.2. Well, a lot of the practitioners I work with, they appreciate trying to keep ladies at that higher level if that feels good to the woman. So women will go in with perimenopausal or menopausal levels, and because they're just inside that 0 at like 0.8 or 0.7, their practitioner might go, you're within range. But what I'm seeing in my office and what I'm hearing about in their love life and their mental health is that just because they're within range doesn't mean it's like optimal or the best for them. Like there's some room to boost for like energy, mental health, drive, sexual desire, again, orgasm response. Women need testosterone just as much as men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah. And it's funny that that historically the rhetoric has been like guys have testosterone and women have estrogen, you know, like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the truth is men have estrogen as well, and men also need estrogen.
Sure.
They just don't need as much. So both genders have testosterone and estrogen.
Sure.
It's just a matter of how it balances out, and how it plays out with how our bodies have been designed to respond to those hormones.
Absolutely. And that's why these interviews, these podcasts are important, because you have to be aware of like what to advocate for, right? If you go to one practitioner and get one answer, there's 12 other practitioners that have different answers.
Yes, ma'am.
Different view. Okay.
Totally. Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to go with this, if you don't mind. Like, I've come to see you, right? And you run labs, and obviously we don't have all the labs that you're necessarily looking for, but say you get for your regular client, you get the labs back, and here's the next steps, so like, where do you go after that? After all that education you give to the client, which is very necessary, is it more based on like quality of life, like what their needs are, optimally? Are they looking for increased libido, increased mood? How do you go next?
Yeah. So it just depends on what the client is experiencing distress in.
Yeah.
Right. So if a woman comes in and she's in perimenopause, that's perimenopause, big picture, 100% of us women are going to go through it. We cannot avoid it. All of us ladies, at some point, if we make it to that far in our lives, we're all going to go through it. And it's oftentimes a 7 to 10 year experience. And from what I'm learning from the practitioners I partner with, is it's one of the most complicated seasons of life to manage. So Katie, I sent you a graph, and if you ladies wanted to Google a graph, if you were to Google a graph of a regular menstrual cycle for a woman in reproduction who's hormonally balanced, at the beginning of the month, or day one, when a woman's bleeding, menstruating, all of our hormones have kind of bottomed out. Okay, so estradiol is low, progesterone is low, testosterone is low, luteinizing hormone is low. That's oftentimes why women have PMDD or PMS. I feel cranky, I'm irritable, I'm ragey, I'm not happy, I'm overeating. They have found that when women are low in estrogen, it's harder to quit addictions. So again, if all this influences my mood and my mental health, and all of my good mental health boosters are bottomed out, my mental health is like, and that's why PMS is like I feel like crap. This is why it's so important for women to track their cycle. And when they come in to see me, I'll say, how are we doing today? I'll check in and ask about like emotional regulation and overall well-being. Well, I'm about to start my cycle, so I'm kind of low, I'm kind of cranky, I'm not feeling motivated, like I'm not really in the mood for anything. So those hormones are low, and then as women approach ovulation, all of them start to climb. And so that's where the internal temperature goes up. That's where women oftentimes could become the sexual aggressors or become more assertive with their sexuality. They become more seductive or more playful with their partner, because it's like, hey, I'm feeling like in the mood. And that's their body's way of saying, hey, there's an egg available. Let's go get something to do something with this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And then if the egg is not used, then the hormones, they spike, and then they start to drop off again. So some women after ovulation, their progesterone really tanks, and that's when progesterone therapy would be helpful to prevent against premenstrual dysphoric disorder, where some women are suicidal. When their progesterone bottoms out, their sleep goes to crap, so there's insomnia. Well, none of us feel good if we're not sleeping. Women actually, Duke did an entire study, Duke University did an entire study on curing depression in women with just getting them enough sleep. So if a woman's progesterone is bottomed out, progesterone is connected to GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that calms the brain down and it helps us sleep. If I don't have progesterone to help calm my brain down, my GABA receptors are like kind of struggling, cue insomnia. That's why oftentimes just before a woman starts bleeding, she has insomnia for a few days. Well, that's not helping mood. That's not helping energy. We know from other studies that energy and body image are some of the top 2 contributing factors for sexual desire in women. So if a woman's tired and she doesn't feel good in her body, oftentimes when we're sleep deprived, it influences how we see everything, including ourselves. I'm not in the mood to be with my partner.
Right.
So anyways, that being said, that's like we're here, we kind of spike, and then we kind of trail off again. Normal cycle. Perimenopause is like this. The graphs are awful. So when you think about mental health and all those neurotransmitters and chemical and hormones, like what day are we on? What time? It's just like, it's no wonder women feel like they're coming out of their skin.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yes, it's hitting really close to home.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it absolutely makes sense. And it also helps right there, just helps, like it takes away from me feeling crazy, right? Like,
Good.
am I just like crazy? Is this
well, women? That's the thing. Women will feel crazy because if you look at the graph of how hormones fluctuate in perimenopause, you will feel crazy. You have every right to feel crazy because if again, hormonal health equals mental health, which I believe that 1,000% as a sex therapist, if hormonal health equals mental health and my hormonal health is like this, well, then of course you feel like that. It's like, I want to rage. I want to sob. I'm depressed. I want to quit my job. I want to turn down job promotions. My confidence is bottoming out. I want to leave my family. I want to leave my husband. I don't ever want to have sex again. I hear that all the time. Like when women are in perimenopause and going through menopause and it's not being treated, the rates of ladies who want to quit life and isolate and peace out skyrocket. That's what looks like a midlife crisis.
And there it is.
Or to be stereotypical, there are lots of things but I'm going to take a risk here.
Take it.
When I go into professional offices, doctor's offices, whatever, and the woman at the desk is in her 50s and she looks angry and curmudgeon, there's just like a theme where you walk in and women who are untreated hormonally and again, I'm stereotyping, but there's a thing where you can see it in the lifespan when I'm like, you're probably in perimenopause or menopause. Like, you cranky girl. You're cranky. You're rude. You're kind of mean. You shouldn't be working the front desk.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can see that.
Yeah.
Different generations of females.
Yeah. But oh, I love it though. Don't you wish you could just be like, but hey, there's a way.
I do. I literally do.
Don't have.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. You don't have to be, there's a quality of life out there.
Yeah.
You can get help. Yeah.
That's it.
Yes.
Wow. Already my brain is, first of all, you're just a plethora. You're like a book, like chapter 1, chapter 2. So
I'm sorry.
No, you're brilliant. See,
Thanks, Phil.
Fabulous. See, that's why it's fabulous, Karisa Kaye. That should be.
Thank you. You're sweet. That's wouldn't be narcissistic at all.
That's okay. Listen, I vote for it. So you got.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and
yes,
I'm everywhere with this, but I think
Yep.
I'm going to continue with
Sure.
Libido being, so the clients I see, and I am not as connected to I need to know more. That's why I'm doing this criminal education in regards to, but libido is just a huge conversation for my clients, for my friends. I mean, and I'll be honest, for my own experience, I blamed it all on giving birth. I was like, I gave birth, and I'm sure there's ample connection. I gave vaginal birth, and then there's postpartum, and then there's raising children, and all the things. But
yes, ma'am.
I almost have a 7-year-old, right? So
in
my mind, I'm not in postpartum stage anymore. Like it's beyond, and I'm finding more and more. So I guess what I'm like that explanation. My question is, right? Like, bring me in through, and you already hit on it, but libido, like, I know labs make a big difference, like knowing what's happening.
Yes,
where
ma'am.
do we go next? Like, how do we tell these women that a lot of them, like 38 to 45, like that doesn't, like, you can actually like sex. You can actually, you know what I mean? Like, how do we embrace that again?
Oh, girl, you just asked like 3 questions. You talked about what I've heard you say, what influences libido, and then how to embrace sexuality.
Beautiful. That's why you're a fantastic therapist. You just
well, again, those are 3-hour lectures. So I've literally given lectures on influence of female sex drive and desire. So I'll try and give you the highlights, and you just raise your hand or pump the brakes. So we know that. Okay, so first of all, I always try to help clients delineate between sex drive and desire.
Please.
So drive feels more hormonal. Okay. And oftentimes to me feels more like testosterone based. So I am hungry. I'm horny. My body wants to have sex, and it wants a release. I want an orgasm. Like I need sex biologically and physiologically. Okay. That's sex drive. That's what oftentimes we see in when both genders used to be more healthy hormonally. It used to be that 4 out of 5 marriages, the husband had the higher drive because he has 15 to 20 times the testosterone.
Right.
Okay. So again, testosterone is essential for both genders. It used to be that healthy men had a lot more, which is why men tend to have the higher drive and always be in the mood more. Okay. So there's drive. Desire tends to be more responsive and receptive, and that often can look more estrogen based. So I could be in the mood. I could not be in the mood. I could be neutral. And hey, if you do some things to like get me there behaviorally, like rub my feet, kiss my neck, let's make out, rub my back, say nice things to me, tell me how gorgeous I am, give me a few minutes and I can get there. We call that responsive desire, where it's actions first, or behavioral manipulations first, and then desire follows.
Okay.
So the first one is more of a spontaneous desire, like, hey, I'm thinking about sex. The second one, it tends to be more female. Hey, I wasn't really thinking about sex, but if we do some things, I could get there. So more women resonate with that model, especially in long-term monogamous relationships. So it used to be that in relationships, the first 18 to 24 months of female's sexual response looked a lot like her male counterparts. Like, she might initiate as much, she might seduce as much, she might be in the mood as much, and then at about year 2, women used to go neutral, which was very confusing.
Yeah.
Lots of different reasons why that happens.
Sure.
So that's sexual. And then, so the other things that influence sexual desire for women is, as I've already said, hormones. A lot of women are on SSRIs right now. Most of those have sexual side effects that are not fun. In fact, Lexapro, I've seen over the years, has really numbed out most of my female clients and some of my guys. There's something that happens with Lexapro where they gain 20 to 30 pounds they can't lose. Well, body image is huge for us ladies. We want to feel good naked. So if I'm going to get naked in front of you, I want to feel sexy. So my partner can think I'm sexy, but a woman needs to feel sexy actually to be confident. So I see that a lot. Like, the male partner's like, she's beautiful. I love her. I love her naked body. I don't care if she's 20 pounds overweight. But if women don't feel good, we're not feeling it. So body image is huge for women. Rest, like I said, sex in theory is a cardiovascular event, depending on how athletic you want it to be, or active or fun or rowdy. It takes energy. Yeah. Well, if my partner initiates and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I've been working all day. I just did groceries and kitchen stuff and put the kids down. Like, I want to go to bed. Yeah, I don't have sex. So I'm really huge on men. The good Lord blessed you with strength so you can take care of your wife and provide rest. And then she wants to respond and offer herself to you. So guys, one of the best things you can do is acts of service all day long for your wife, your bride, so that she feels like she can chill and be in her feminine energy, like rest. And then when she's rested, she's like more flirty and playful. That's why vacation sex is a thing. Because when women can rest and get out of their head, they're like, their body can respond. Parasympathetic rest and digest is essential for sexual arousal. So when we are in rest and digest and parasympathetic, the blood pools to the genitals and I can get turned on. If I'm always anxious and wound up, which most American women are right now, one, my pelvic floor is probably tight and you constrict blood flow. So that's no good. That's a whole nother conversation. Two, my brain is like, there's a grizzly bear. There's a grizzly bear. And that's a real or imagined stress. Well, if there's a grizzly bear, it's counterintuitive to slow down and mate. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's called the dual motor cortex. That's in the brain, and that has to do with brakes and accelerators. Brakes and accelerators. Sex sounds good. I have dishes to do. Sex sounds fun. Okay, well, the kids aren't home. We have the house to ourselves. Yeah, let's do this. I can't have sex right now. I have a work deadline. So it brakes and accelerators. Dual motor context. Anyways, sexual desire. SSRIs, hormonal birth control. Like I said, every premarital couple I've ever worked with or newlywed that starts hormonal birth control almost always tanks their libido and their drive. Those are just obesity, weight gain. That's a huge problem in the United States. So weight gain majorly impacts sexual function for men and women. Yeah. Anyways, we could talk for days about all that. Did I answer your question?
You absolutely did. Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, there's so many. Well, I actually want to segue into body image too, but weight gain, body image, because it's such a thing. And there is, at least for myself. Okay. So let me go back to me. Like, there has been an odd weight gain I've never had that challenge. And all of a sudden it's not, then everything's tighter. And when you can't do your zipper up without it trying to pop down, like, I don't feel sexy or cute. Like, and that's all I think about. So, So give me a little bit more on that. Like, how do we approach through the mental health scope? How do we approach that?
Yep. So first of all, most Americans are overweight. We know that from stats. There's a lot more insulin resistance because of our high sugar, highly processed food diet. This is a real thing that all of us are going to have to look at. So our insulin resistance is a problem. Visceral fat, which is the fat around the abdomen, tends to increase significantly as women go through perimenopause and menopause. Reasons that could be, it's connected to inflammation and hormonal fluctuations. So inflammation. So testosterone, for example, would be a helpful anti-inflammatory, as would estrogen.
Yeah.
Hormone replacement therapy works. Okay, so big picture, I want you to hear this. Visceral fat is metabolically active. Okay, so we can do, when we work out, it's not necessarily about calories. It's about hormonal fluctuation and inflammation. So I mentioned before, there are 4 types of estrogen. One of those is called estrone.
Okay.
And it's produced by fat.
Oh.
So our adipose tissue produces a type of estrogen called estrone. Well, when my ovaries stop producing enough estrogen and my body starts to shut down in perimenopause and menopause, my body will intuitively hold on to fat because I need estrogen from some source. So if my ovaries aren't producing it, I'm not going to let go of this abdominal fat or this fat around my thighs or my hips because it's compensating for what my ovaries aren't producing. So when women start hormone replacement therapy, it gives the body permission to let go of that adipose tissue because it's getting what it needs from another source. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So most women will always gain abdominal fat, visceral fat, because it's like, hey, I still want estrogen. I still want that estrone is still being produced by my adipose tissue. So I'm going to hold on to this unless there's another source of estrogen I can tap into. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Often, and this is also important for men because when men have higher levels of visceral fat, their body is producing more estrogen, which will negatively impact their testosterone levels. It will have a feminizing effect on males.
Sure.
So obesity is problematic on many levels. One is that it's feminizing for males, which long-term is not healthy for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just connected it on a whole different.
Yes.
A whole different. Yes. Okay.
So things like strength training.
Yeah.
So I come from the CrossFit space, college sports, blah, blah, blah. I used to love like running hard all the time. I'm 40 now.
Yeah.
I have started to shift how I train.
Okay.
So women in perimenopause and menopause have to stay away from all of the high cortisol producing. Dr. Stacy Sims is great about this if anyone wants to listen to her stuff. As our hormones shift, I used to be a personal trainer.
Okay.
Women, first of all, we are not little men. That's Dr. Stacy Sims' platform. The way that you train the female body to respond is very different, or should be very different, than the way we train a male. Okay?
Sure.
So like the CrossFit space usually works for men across the lifespan. That high cortisol, highly inflammatory thing for women long-term is actually detrimental. Okay. Yeah. So women have to, like, strength training is awesome for bone density, for muscle mass, for healthy hormone production, for healthy brain health, like strength training. More and more women who are now in their 50s that grew up in the 80s and it was like the skinny the skinnier the better, and like high cardio and step class and like hit. They're going, holy cow, I wish I would have started my strength training 30 years ago. So if women will really intentionally dial in lean muscle mass and putting on muscle mass, that is a beautiful way to fight the aging process, to protect your bone density, tissue health. We could talk for a long time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So not that you need to give us your workout regimen by any but flipping it, because that was a thing, like run on the treadmill.
Yeah.
I picture like the aerobics, jazzercise.
Yes.
It's fun, but
yes.
So strength training meaning what to you? Like high weights, less reps, low weights, more reps, body weight.
Changing it up.
Okay.
So Stacy Sims, she does like strength training and then like shorter sprint intervals.
Okay.
So sprint intervals are healthy, but there's a very deliberate way that we do sprint intervals versus 45 to 60 minutes of sprint intervals. So strength training being like bench press, squats, deadlifts, strict press. I love sled pushes, resistance training. I love pushing a sled, dragging a sled, like all of that resistance training. You want resistance training. So it's like a burst of energy, chill. A burst of energy, chill. But again, we could talk, she has a whole program for that. But basically it's a metabolic manipulation, a muscle manipulation, the way that the body responds to that, the way that our hormones respond to that, versus like a chronic, like go all the time. So I keep my cortisol, which is our stress hormone, spiked. If I keep my cortisol spiked all week long and my body's already struggling with cortisol, if I'm in perimenopause, That's also going to add to that abdominal fat and that inflamed brain, which is going to play a part in anxiety and depression, inflamed tissues. I feel puffy. I feel swollen. I just don't feel very good. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Just a big snowball. Like, that's just
continually. But it's fascinating that we're learning this.
Yeah.
Because
also fascinating that it's 2024 and we're learning it. Who am I?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the fact that this has been true across the lifespan forever and we're just now tapping into it. I'm like, God bless women before us.
For real.
Bless them.
So I'm so glad you even say that, because it takes me to something that my specialty is perinatal mental health. I was going to say menopause. Perinatal mental health, and all the things that come with postpartum and stuff like that. And the answer I get there, and now that myself and my clients are aging, an answer I get here is like, I don't have time or energy to do these things. Like, you want me to do strength training, you want me to go get labs, you want me to, I don't, like, I've already felt like this for 7 years. Like, this is just the baseline. Like, talk to me about that, because they obviously are coming, let's just say, to me or to you for something. But it just seems so much. What do you do? How do you approach that? I want to learn from you. I know.
Well, I tell my clients, what is your health worth to you?
Ooh.
What's your mental health worth? We make time for things that matter.
Yeah.
So most of us can spend this is going to be a tough one. When you get your screen report at the end of the week and you look at how many hours you've been on your phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put your phone down. Most people have plenty of time to get their labs done. Most people have plenty of time to do 30 minutes of strength training. It's a matter of allotting and prioritizing. Like, what is your health worth to you? So I'm biased. To me, health is wealth. If you don't have your mental health, you've got not much to work with. I mean, mental health is literally everything. And I think people are finally honoring that for the first time, because we're seeing what mental illness is doing. So, and then your quality of life, like, we know as a couples therapist, the health of a couple drastically impacts every other part of their life. So if a person's struggling in their marriage, if it's struggling in their sex life, it will play into, for men, it plays into cardiovascular health, mental health. They produce, like, when men are happily married, the research tells us they make $5,000 to $7,000 more a year. They live significantly longer. They get in fewer car accidents, like, because the health of their relationship sets their body into a certain level of emotional regulation that helps them to be productive and online in a good way during the day. If I'm fighting with my partner, if we're always at each other, if we're always in distress, all of that stress is going to bleed out into how I parent, into how I show up at work or don't show up at work, how I treat everybody. And then it's just easier to, like, check out on my phone and scroll instead of, like, be conscious and do something about it. So for me, it's, I just challenge people. If you want it bad enough, you're going to go do it.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. And we don't, it takes me to, and maybe this is like over a cup of coffee, we have this conversation, but like, it takes me to, I'm trying not to put my own words out there, but like,
you're okay.
Because maybe, let me say it this way, women have been so, I don't know, let's just say put in a box or pigeonholed, however we want to say it, in regards to health and how they should act in things. Like, you think that plays a role at all into whether or not they seek to take the next step, to do the next thing? Am I making sense? Am I question?
Let me see if I'm tracking. So are you saying because women unfortunately have been so dismissed by the medical community?
I like it.
Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yes. Just, I guess, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So my experience as a sex therapist is a female usually has to go to 11 different practitioners before she's accurately diagnosed. Her sexual dysfunction is accurately diagnosed. 11 practitioners. Most women are not going to go to 11 practitioners to find out what's going on. My super determined, like, over my dead body, I'm going to figure this out, we'll do it. But people are tired. It's expensive. It takes time. That's a luxury to get to do all that pursuing at some level, right? So most people quit.
Yeah.
And they just trust the person with the white coat, right? So, like, we are, golly, if I could, in HIPAA compliance, disclose all of the medical gaslighting and medical trauma my female clients have had from both female and male practitioners, it's nuts. Like, I want to sit down with male and female practitioners and, like, In fact, I did. A few years ago, I got to sit down with a group of OBGYN residents and talk about hormone health. Completely dismissed. Completely dismissed. I actually said, if you want to save a woman's sex life, you need to find another way other than hormonal birth control to help her do the birth control thing. Maybe the husband gets a vasectomy instead of all the onus being put on the woman. Like, that's a ton. Like, a lot of men can get vasectomies and bear the burden of birth control. They all balked at me. So Western medicine, unfortunately, is hormonal. That's it. We're just doing hormonal birth control. I said, well, then set her up for heart disease and stroke, osteopenia, osteoporosis, tissue damage, like vaginal tissue. I want women to hear this. Your vaginal tissue is completely hormonally responsive. So oftentimes another sign and symptom for women is pain with intercourse when they're going through perimenopause. I have a lot of girls, again, or ladies that have started hormonal birth control. Their labia start to get papery thin, and their vaginal canal is dry. It feels like sandpaper. That's a complaint. When our hormones are imbalanced, your vulva and your vagina are going to tell you about it. So your labia are estrogen responsive. Those are our lips. The vestibule between the vaginal opening and the anus. The vestibule can be very erogenous and delightful to have stimulated for sexual arousal. That is testosterone responsive.
Oh, no. Wow.
Testosterone responsive. Our hormones absolutely can influence our ability to lubricate, become sexually aroused, to orgasm. Hormones impact our genitals in a very powerful way. In fact, estrogen, when we go through puberty, darkens our tissue. That's why our nipples get darker. Our estrogen gets, our areolas darken, our genitals shift. That's why women during pregnancy, when they flood with different levels, some of their skin will darken, right?
Sure, of course.
That's all estrogen.
Wow, the power of estrogen.
Yes. Yeah. So anyways, how do we get off on that? What you started asking me something about women being discouraged because of their medical response.
Yeah, and you really did answer it. I mean, just like, have we, has it been, I forget the word you used, but it's been so difficult, if I may, there hasn't been answers, there hasn't been research, that now that there is, it's like almost programmed in us. I say that because I even went through this to to just listen to the first practitioner's answer was going to be enough, right? Or not even think. I mean, I didn't even want to look into my symptomology until I hosted that event we did. And then it was like in the back, I felt like I needed like a martini and a cigarette. Like, what the?
You're a hoot, girl. Yeah.
I am nowhere near trained in the space that you are, but I am in the medical community.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah.
So
most people don't. So I'm a big advocate of coaching my clients to advocate. I'm like, you're going to have to speak up. You're going to have to be assertive. Like if your practitioner is dismissive or rude or not willing to hear you, first of all, that's just bad medicine. Yeah. Like our practice is called a practice. You and I are practitioners. Physicians are practitioners. They're not deities. Nobody knows everything. None of us do.
No.
So a good practitioner should be humble. They should be continually trying to learn. They should be open to hearing about what you think. They need to be collaborative, right? Like that's good practice. Like I don't know everything. You don't know everything. No OBGYN or urologist or PCP or cardiologist knows everything. That's humanly impossible. So when a practitioner lacks humility, they're not open or responsive. I'm like, ding, can we find another practitioner?
Yeah.
I've had to, some of my practitioners, I've had to literally say, I need you to shut up for a minute and listen to me. When I was in Maryland, I had a doctor that I went to and I said, I need you to be quiet and listen to me. I can't even get a word out and you're interrupting me. And he just was like, and I said, listen to me. And I ended up figuring it out on my own. I ended up figuring out what was going on. Anyway, so I'm big on, you got to speak up.
Yeah.
You got to speak up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not in a jerk way, but just, you have to advocate for yourself.
Yeah. Because in the end, this is what I have. It's the only thing I truly have as much control over it as I can, but truly have full control over. Yep. So I know, and again, you're right, have like a podcast show. You do a podcast show, which we will talk about. That's on all of this, but take it just so I know that even when we talked about it in like the pre-show type of thing of like sexual trauma, right? Affecting libido and sexuality. And I know that that's a whole nother conversation, but just for this state, right? So like while perimenopause and the hormones and the symptoms are absolutely connected, give me a little bit of that because I think there's a lot more trauma than people give credit.
Yeah.
Or understand.
Bless you. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Katie. So we know that 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 females have had some type of sexual trauma. The stats say that 1 in 6 males have had sexual trauma of some kind, and trauma is subjective. So you and I can view the same event or go through the same experience. You walk away unscathed, I can walk away devastated. So trauma is subjective. Okay, so I want people to hear that. Nobody can talk you out of your trauma. That's my first thing. Nobody can tell you that if that was traumatizing for you, it was traumatizing. If you walked in and watched mom or dad you caught them watching porn, that can be traumatizing. If you were touched inappropriately by somebody who made you feel uncomfortable and you said no and they kept going, that can feel traumatizing, right? So trauma is subjective. So the brain is the most powerful sex organ.
Brain is the most powerful sex organ. I just wanted to say that again. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So the brain is the most powerful sex organ. Our skin is the largest.
Okay.
So our culture is very genitally focused in our sexuality. The truth is, great sex and fully embodied sex is mind, body, spirit. It's a sensory experience. It's not just my genitals and my erectile tissue. So if my brain is the most powerful sex organ, what has my brain seen or experienced? Because that's going to reinforce how I feel about something. So if my brain has experienced trauma as it relates to sex, or it has paired distress or discomfort or shame with something sexual, it would be very common that I would go to 2 places with that: sexual aversion or sexual anorexia. I shut down and completely avoid it. Or hypersexuality. I try to take my power back by reenacting it over and over again and over-sexualizing everything, over-sexualizing myself, my behaviors, etc. So those are common trauma responses: hypersexuality or like an aversion. So again, our brain works in pairings and association, Pavlov's dog, for those of the listeners that have heard that, classical conditioning. So if my brain thinks of you touching my knee or you tickle me, and that reminds me of how I was inappropriately touched when I was little, don't tickle me. And I go into trauma body. Or if maybe I was abused with a soft startup by my abuser.
Sure.
And then now my partner wants a soft startup with me. Instead of me feeling open and safe to that, I go into trauma body, which is freeze or fight or flight or shutdown. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's an enormous part of my practice. I do a ton of work with sexual trauma survivors and trying to heal that.
Yeah.
So I guess to the listeners, I want to advocate for you. You can heal that. I'm biased. I've gone on to do training in accelerated resolution therapy. People do EMDR, but basically rewiring the brain and the body so that you don't always have to have that trigger or that trauma reaction, because trauma comes back as a reaction. Like all of a sudden, I don't know, I'm just flooding and there's a cascade of my brain's hijacked. The danger brain's online. I'm in fight or flight, right? So that comes up commonly in because of like what I just said, the stats, like 1/3 of the female population has sexual trauma.
1/3 of the female population has sexual trauma.
So 33% of the female population has sexual trauma. That's enormous. That's something that we as educators need to be very mindful of when we're giving speeches or workshops. That's something that practitioners need to consider when they're doing pelvic floor exams or prostate exams. I wish I could train all sexual health people in trauma, compassion, and just awareness, because so many people in their day-to-day are carrying around that trauma in their body. And they don't understand it. Their partner doesn't understand it. They're in distress. Their marriage or sex life is in distress. And you can heal that. You can heal that.
I mean, it's so great. Obviously this whole episode's so great, but all of it's so great because there's so much hope to have an ample quality of life, all of the things, right? That
yes, ma'am.
What I view as like true success, right? Like living and being the best you.
Thriving.
That's exactly what you keep saying. So one more thing I want to, off of like trauma, especially like going back to, I'm sure myself, but a lot of clients I see is like, whether it be from the trauma or hormones or whatever it is, this time period, and there's so much shame and guilt because I'm not my optimal self. I can't do all the things I used to do, right? I don't want to have sex with my partner. I have this extra fat around the lower part of my waist and my jeans stay, I went like this and I thought it was my blonde hair, bleached my hair, and it's actually, so then it becomes like am I growing? Like there's, just viewing this next part of life is like, like gross. I'm old and like not cute, so, and I know there's more deeper on the surface, but respond to that, like the shame and guilt and what the brain does for shame and these guilty feelings, especially at this time of life. I'm loading you with questions. I'm sorry.
It's okay, girl. I just hope this feels helpful because I'm like, I could easily rabbit trail down 5.
No, this is so helpful.
Conjectures here.
No.
Okay. Okay. So shame and guilt are really gross and ugly. Dr. Brene Brown talks about shame and guilt. If people want to study the power of shame, she had her PhD in it. So Brene Brown talks about shame. She's like the guru. Shame makes us, there are lots of different responses we all have as shame. I have a fight response. So think Good Will Hunting, Matt Damon's character, like coming at you, guns blazing, like I'm coming against the thing that makes me feel shame or bad. Flight, which is I'm running away, I'm avoiding, and that can look like being a workaholic or a busybody. Avoidance. I'm not looking at you. No eye contact, because eye contact is vulnerable. There's so much that happens in humans with eye contact and vulnerability and connection. So I'm running away. Fawning, which is groveling. Okay, just don't be mad at me. I'll just get small and I'll self-abandon, whatever you need. Just don't be mad at me. So fawning is super common. Freeze, don't know what to do. That's probably the most common, and then people have to train themselves to respond differently. And then a feigned death response. People pass out. Like the 2 hemispheres go too much, and they pass out. So 5 different responses when we feel threats, shame and guilt. You can rewire those, which is super hopeful and helpful. The other thing is I tell people now more than ever, if you live in the United States of America, you live in Walt Disney World. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have the luxury of self-actualizing. The rest of the world, to be frank, because I've done a ton of third world missions, is just trying to get them 1 meal a day.
Yeah.
We have the luxury of self-actualizing. We have the luxury of going, I'm not optimal. I want to do something about it. So start someplace. Do something. Honor your gifts. Honor your resources. You have medicine. You have the internet. You have education on the internet. We have medicine. We have supplements. We have gyms. We have practitioners. We have free or discounted therapy. I mean, start somewhere. The cool thing that we know about sex and quality of sex and sexual satisfaction is most people don't start having their best sex until they're in their 50s.
I did not know that. So that,
yes.
Well, there's a lot of hope then.
Yes. Most people start having their best sex in their 50s. Women aren't necessarily, or couples aren't worried about pregnancy scares. People have figured out by then oftentimes what they like, what they don't like. They're more comfortable asserting that, asking for what they want. Empty nesters, right? Like I don't have to worry about getting caught. We can walk around naked. We can make noise. We can do all the fun, sexy things and not worry about, being interrupted. So it's really fun and hope life-giving for people to know that they can start having their best sex in their 50s.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that is the perfect, like, not that we're ending it just yet, but the perfect ending is like you just helped me, right? I don't have to be so disheartened that I'm aging. It's been such an anti-aging world or culture we live in. Yeah. And really, I need to embrace it and the ways to live optimally and thriving, as you said. But also there's hope to look for. Just talking about
Yes. I don't know. The hookup culture, the pornified mindset, that is not designed to be satisfying long term. It's not going to work. Yeah. And more people are coming in saying, my love life kind of sucks. I'm not really happy. I don't feel really connected. Help us to feel better. So long-term relationships, monogamous, just in general, your best sex is going to happen when you're deeply connected across all the fronts. So that's the other part I didn't mention earlier that impacts libido and drive and desire is what does the relationship look like? How connected do you feel? The average couple is making 2 to 3 minutes of eye contact a day.
Holy moly.
You make more eye contact out on a date. Like when you're dating, you make more eye contact with a new partner than most couples are making in their day-to-day. So hanging up phones, turning off TVs, getting off the computer, that's a huge part of my formula for intimacy with couples is I want you to turn off all your distractions and look at your partner. In fact, I've started doing that with couples in my office. I'm like, I'm just going to have you turn and look at each other. and they just go, they're so uncomfortable because no one's looking at each other.
No
one's looking at each other, which
Absolutely.
plays a part of disconnection and isolation in the American culture, which is influencing depression and anxiety. So we need to look at each other. We are designed for eye contact, face-to-face contact, body contact, and we need body contact and relational richness outside of genital contact before we feel truly sexually satisfied. Does that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely does.
So
Absolutely.
We can talk forever about that, but yeah.
So no, it's so fabulous. So tell me this, it's my last question again.
So,
to our listeners, to our female listeners, whether I will be honest, we have some that aren't to perimenopause yet, but I know are like, I got to get ready. I don't want this to slap me. And then I have some in menopause, right? But either way, to all of them, like, from your scope, professionally, personally, like, what do you want women to know the most? Like, what is one? I don't want to say one good thing of advice, but like, what do you want them to know? I know I'm saying that over and over. Does that?
Girl. Okay. Well, let me think. Okay. One, you're not a man.
Okay.
Your sexual response is going to be very different from your male counterpart. Two, your hormonal health is an enormous part of your mental health.
Yeah.
Three, there is plenty of hope out there. Please try to educate yourself. Do not settle if it doesn't feel right to you. Read another book, reach out to another practitioner, listen to another podcast, keep going until you find your answers. I believe 100% that human beings make sense, and it's not supposed to be rocket science. Actually, my trauma training taught me that. Dr. Margaret Blaustein in developmental trauma training. She said, your clients are going to come in and they're going to say, I'm crazy. And she was a Jewish woman. She said, if we believe that God is a God of science and divine design and intelligent design, human beings make sense according to their context. So you need to understand your context. So be curious about your context. It's not black and white all the time, especially for women. We're just more complicated. Yeah. We're more complicated. So we're not little men. We're designed to respond differently. The porn culture is not accurate for men or women, but if anything, it's based on a super toxic male model of sexuality. That's where most people are getting their information and education. Please throw that out the window and reach out if you want healthy resources on healthy female sexual response and sexuality, because that is so disheartening and poisoning for most couples and individuals. And it's an industry of lies and deception on a ton of fronts. But you are not designed to be a porn star. If you're not responding like a porn star, great. They're not even responding that way. That's all an act. Okay. So porn is not real, and it's not healthy, and it's not fulfilling. It's okay to want more in your relationship. It's okay to want to be treated well. It's okay to want to be connected. Sex is not all for the man. I want all women to hear that. Sex is not supposed to be all for the man. Sex is not all about his penis.
Yeah.
So when I get to talk and do workshops, I'm like, we got to slow this whole thing down. Just because he has an erection doesn't mean you need to jump. But that's what culture teaches across the world. Yeah. Is that the female sexual experience is secondary, if important at all. And so I'm a huge advocate for your pleasure matters. Your body has been designed for pleasure. Pleasure is a gift. It's a built-in medicine cabinet. Is your antidepressant, your anti-anxiety. You deserve to feel good.
Yeah.
You deserve to feel good and to be safe and protected.
Yeah. And to be safe and protected.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. And to just reiterate that you're right. Like you said it before that, but the luxury of being able to take the time and space to challenge ourselves, to learn more, to feel better, feel different beyond the basic needs. Like, yes, we should all, right, find the time. Oh my goodness. So listen, I just want to hang out with you every day, all day, but you are say it over.
You're sweet.
A wealth. But tell the listeners about your podcast and what that encompasses. Yeah, encompasses.
Okay, so I have a podcast, the Healthy Sex Podcast. I wanted it to be classier and more informative and sophisticated than a lot of the sex podcasts out there. It comes from a faith perspective as well as a science perspective. Okay. So I want people to feel safe and not triggered when they're listening to it, because when you Google podcasts on sex, there's a lot of tacky, pornified stuff out there. So it's called The Healthy Sex Podcast. It's on Apple and Spotify. I talk about the spiritual, the physical, the relational, the psychological, the cultural, all sorts of fun stuff. I'm doing a podcast later today on treating erectile dysfunction. It's for men and women. So yeah, I just want it to be informative. I know sex is very, very personal. A lot of people still don't feel comfortable talking about it. So I wanted people to have a resource to listen to and learn about themselves and their bodies and their partners, their dynamics, even in the privacy of their own bathroom, woodshed, car ride, whatever.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Apple
and Spotify, you said.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have YouTube too then?
Yeah, but that needs a lot of love and updating.
Well, you got a lot of things happening.
Yes, ma'am.
Not just sitting around.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I'm so grateful for your time today, and really your time multiple times, because this is like another place I've seen you just educate the crap out of myself. So I appreciate that.
Yes,
I appreciate you.
Thank you. I hope it felt helpful, because
it was absolutely perfect. And it is. And I think, like, just to sum it up before we say goodbye, like, it is complex, but that's okay. Like, we deserve to be able to be complex and still have answers.
Yes.
Like, it just
100%.
doesn't have to be simple, but people I know are working their tails off, right, to find research and really catch up to these forever been missed. So it's in the works, but we can also do stuff too, and like begin talking to practitioners, begin podcasts.
Yes.
The knowledge is key. You're absolutely right.
Yes, ma'am. So let me end with this little shout out for resources for the listeners. So 3 different practitioners, if you will, or experts in their field that I think are great for the most modern, up-to-date research as it relates to the topics we've talked about. Sarah Hill, PhD, Dr. Sarah Hill, PhD. She's a research psychologist. Okay. She does a ton of beautiful research around hormonal birth control, mental health, sexual function. You can find, even if you're not worried about the hormonal birth control piece, she talks a ton about hormones, how they impact us, how they influence our mood, our sexual behavior. She's fantastic. Dr. Sarah Hill. Is it Mary Claire? What's her name? She wrote The New Menopause.
Yeah, I just got the book.
Dr. Mary Claire. Yeah. She wrote the new Menopause. She's a brilliant expert in her field. Yeah. Check her stuff out. And then Dr. Stacy Sims. Okay. She's an exercise physiologist, and she's the one talking about women training and training differently in perimenopause and menopause. And that's going to be great for like strength training, cardio, what's appropriate, nutrition, the things we need to, intermittent fasting, like women going through menopause don't need to be doing intermittent fasting, all sorts of fascinating stuff. So I think those resources are beautiful places for ladies to start.
Absolutely. And we will throw that in the description along with all of your amazing, just following you on social media. I've learned so much. So social,
thank you, Katie.
Podcasts, all of it. We want to, you're fantastic. And
you're fantastic. Thank you for your advocacy for women. You're the queen hype. Yes, you are hype queen.
But
no, it's not. It's who you are. So thank you for all that you're doing to try and help women.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's really beautiful.
I'm glad to do it. I got to take that Michigander in me and spread it
the Midwest energy.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we will share it all with our listeners, and to our listeners, we just want to thank you all for joining us on Unsaid to continue this amazing conversation about perimenopause and just embracing you, learning about you, growing you so that you can live and thrive, as Karisa said. So Karisa, you're amazing.